Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the new HUAWEI MateBook 14, a very interesting computer because of its compactness. Let's get started. This is the 2024 edition of this computer. We have to mention that because every year Huawei is renewing the models. Obviously, it is not Huawei's flagship computer. For that, there is the MateBook X Pro 2024, which is the lightest in the entire segment. But in this case, it still retains a thin and light design. So how about joining me to meet it? But first, let me tell you about its price. Currently, in Mexico, it is offered in two configurations. The basic configuration comes with Intel Core Ultra 5 and its current price is 19,999 pesos. That is approximately $1,140. Just to give you a reference, but remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. The second option is the one I have in my hands and is the one we will be analyzing with Intel Core Ultra 7. Its current price is 23,999 pesos. That is approximately $1,340. Remember that in Mexico, taxes are included just for your reference. Join me below to know every detail about it. And in either option, the MatePad 11 is included as a gift, with the keyboard accessory included as well. So I think it's a nice addition considering you can use it as a wireless external monitor, so consider it. Now join me to know its details. As you can notice from the camera, this computer comes with a pretty shiny design. Its main material is aluminum alloy, which makes it feel good in hand as well. So we are in front of a computer with a very nice design. This green edition is the only option available in Mexico, although other versions may be available in other countries. Its thickness is 14.5 mm and it weighs 1.30 kilograms. I insist. If you want the lightest computer from Huawei, you should go for the MateBook X Pro 2024. But this one also has a considerably light configuration. In this case, it should be noted that it partially opens with one hand. That is, it takes a bit of work, but if you try to do this tinkering if you manage to open the computer completely with one hand. It doesn't include a 180-degree opening angle on its hinge, but it's good enough to have different working angles. And as you can see on the bottom, it comes with a very large grille for air circulation, as it includes the Huawei shark fin fans, which are considerably quiet. In addition, it brings a small relief to help this air circulation, although it will definitely help a lot more if you place some object here to have even more inclination. The keyboard is fully backlit with 2 levels, and it also offers us 1.5 millimeters of travel on its keys, which comes in handy considering it's a pretty slim computer. So typing will be comfortable. In addition, the fingerprint reader comes outside the keyboard, and in this case it does not have the letter 9 because it is a review unit, but obviously the keyboard should arrive fully adapted to your region. In Mexico, it will arrive with the letter NIN. In countries where they use some other characters, it will also arrive adapted. The FN key, as we are used to from Huawei, comes with this switch that will be indicated by this small LED just like the shift key. So it's a considerably good keyboard, although it doesn't obviously include a number pad because it's a much smaller space, and it also doesn't include a search button, which some other Huawei computers do have. The trackpad is about 5.5 inches and it supports traditional Windows gestures for zooming, for scrolling, for switching desktops, or for managing all your windows or desktops. But it does not support Huawei's premium gestures, which could be controlling brightness or volume on the sides, nor does it support knuckle gestures, which the Huawei MateBook X Pro 2024 does. On the left side, we will find a USB-C connector. In this case, it serves for data transfer, for charging, and also supports DisplayPort, so you could connect a monitor through it. We'll also find on this side a USB 3.2 Gen 1 connector with very good Type A speed, and finally HDMI along with the headphone jack. So the ports are considerably good, taking into account that we are talking about a computer that is indeed light and thin, and they usually sacrifice this type of connectors. On the right side, we even find another USB 3.2 Gen 1 connector to offer us an excellent level of connectivity. But speaking of wireless connectivity, you should know that it also supports Wi-Fi 6 networks, including Huawei's metal line antennas, which usually have an excellent range. Although obviously here you will depend 100% on your internet provider, which in this case is not as powerful as other days. Finally, in terms of Bluetooth connectivity, we will find the 5.2 version. It is not the latest, but it already offers a good level of stability. Overall, it is a computer that we could consider compact and very comfortable to carry in a backpack. The screen is 14.2 inches to be more precise, and as you can see, although it does have some reflections, it tries to avoid them as much as possible. But it is definitely a computer designed for working indoors, and it still offers an excellent level of visualization. Remember that we are in front of an OLED panel, so the colors will be very intense. We will also find good viewing angles from the side, although due to reflections, the best experience is to view the content from the front. In addition, it offers us a 3:2 ratio. Remember that I find this screen ratio very useful when working with various applications. It is not so focused on multimedia consumption, but on productivity, because you have enough space to work perfectly well with two applications at the same time, unlike wider screens that take away vertical space. So it is very practical for those who want it for work. But if your main use is going to be for watching movies or series, note that you will have quite large black stripes at the top and bottom. That's not to say it will be a bad experience, but again, it's a computer more focused on work than entertainment. This screen offers a maximum brightness level of 450 nits, which is pretty good for indoor use. The truth is that it can work comfortably, but the most interesting thing about this screen is its resolution, since it is 2880 by 1900 pixels. Then, Windows recommends you to adjust to a scale of 200%, but if you are not interested in having smaller elements, you could perfectly adjust the scale to 100% and observe all the space that you would have available. You can use quite complex applications with this resolution, although obviously everything will look very small. But you can perfectly use with 150% scaling and still have plenty of space on the screen. That's thanks to the resolution, because it reaches 243 pixels per inch, having good sharpness in text and images. So, it's a really very good screen in many ways, although it stays at 60 Hz, which is the standard, but consider that the MateBook X Pro 2024 model goes up to 120 Hz. But that's for the most demanding. Overall, it's a screen that, I insist, is going to give you a very good experience. The speakers are placed at the bottom, giving us an immediate hint that it is not such a priority in this computer. The sound is going to bounce off the table first and then travel to your ears. That causes the mid-frequencies to stand out a bit more. In this case, though, I honestly like the sound. It doesn't have as much bass as I would like, but I think it can compete well in this segment. Although the most appropriate whenever the speakers are on the bottom will be to use headphones. In this case, it does have a jack. But let's listen to a small test of the speakers. Although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. And remember that at the software level, yes, we are going to find also the customization of the audio devices. So on the speakers, we find an equalization, for example, for ultra bass, or we have also the turbo sound experience. In fact, also on the headphones, you could get to modify your experience in terms of equalization. We will find two microphones on the front that are very well directed towards you, so they are expected to have a good sound recording. Also, it has two different modes. One of noise cancellation and one of HD sound. That is very faithful without any cancellation. In fact, it can also go around learning your own voice to cancel additional noise. So that's interesting. Let's try them out.
Esta es una prueba de grabación de audio utilizando el modo de cancelación de ruido, aunque estoy en un entorno silencioso, pero esta es la primera prueba. Ahora estás escuchando el audio con sonido HD para esta segunda prueba de audio grabada con la Huawei MateBook 14 2024.
The camera on this computer is able to give us a full HD signal, and as you notice, it has a little LED indicator when you're using it. Also, again, through software, we'll find some options. For starters, we can disable the camera so that no other application can run it. Notice that if I try to enter the camera, it shows me a warning that the camera is disabled. If I want to turn it back on, I must access this part and turn on the switch. In addition, it also includes an option to change your camera background, and obviously it applies to any app you are running, be it Zoom, Google Meet, or any other. It also includes some beauty settings to even out your skin, brighten your face more, even modify the size of your eyes and sharpen your face a bit more. See what the difference looks like when I turn this setting off and on. It also includes an automatic centering function that, as you will notice, will apply a little zoom to the image so that you are always in the center of the shot, even if you move around in the scene. And finally, it has an eye contact option that will try to slightly redirect your eyes to make it look like you're looking a little bit more towards the camera. Here's the test with a well-lit scene from this camera. I think it's fine. It does get to overexposing some scenes at times, but then it adjusts. I think overall, we could say it's a camera that does capture us with a good quality. Now, this would be a backlit indoor scene. A fairly complex scene, but I think it's good enough for video calls. Obviously, we're not looking for a studio quality image here. We're just looking for it to look good for video calls. Although in this case, the backlighting could become a bit aggressive. So it will be more advisable to use this camera in scenarios that are not backlit. As part of the software, we will find Windows 11, Home Edition the expected obviously, but also remember that Huawei adds a little bit of software but does not add bloatware unlike other manufacturers that have a lot of junk applications. Which I really like. It's a pretty clean experience. Only the tools that Microsoft offers will come pre-installed. Plus obviously the Huawei software which is inside the PC Manager. In fact, they also add a notification panel that might help you a little bit. But if you double-click on this icon, you open the PC Manager, which will be where you can connect more of your devices. Remember that, for example, you could connect your cell phone in a fairly simple way. In fact, if you log into Huawei, you will be able to do it even better. And once you have logged in, notice that from the Huawei control panel in the Super Device section, several devices that have this same account will appear. For example, in this case, already appeared Huawei Pure 70 Ultra. I simply have to drag it and that way I start the pairing. Notice that having the same account, it doesn't even need some kind of confirmation or anything like that. And from now on, I can completely use the cell phone directly on the computer. Likewise, I could drag and drop files. In general, I can do absolutely everything that I usually do on my cell phone, but from the computer. For example, I could also type using the computer keyboard. I can even drag and drop any type of file. So remember that the experience is quite good in the Huawei ecosystem because you can perfectly use both devices at the same time. And here I already have the picture I just transferred. Notice how from the File Explorer my cell phone also appears as if it were a USB stick or an external storage device. Then I can also explore the contents of this cell phone from the Windows File Explorer. And if you have a Huawei tablet that in this case would come as a gift, one of the models, note that you can also connect in a fairly simple way to your computer, simply with a touch, and in this case we will be able to use it as if it were an external monitor. Notice that it takes just a few seconds. It does the job and that's it. In this case we would have a duplicate monitor, but obviously in this section we can choose if we also want to extend our monitor so that we can use it simply as a complementary monitor to have much more space. So it's also very practical since the whole connection is wireless. Then the ecosystem functions are the highlights, and also if you shake the cursor you could show the Super Hub to add some file to this small clipboard that you can then transfer to the rest of your devices. In the Huawei PC Manager you can also enable Huawei Share to easily send files wirelessly between all your devices, and it comes with some suggestions for you to learn how to take advantage of all the functions that the device brings. Among them, for example, would be AI search that you can also enable from the small control panel that brings the device, and through this small search panel you will be able to find files directly from your computer, on your phone, or on any device with your Huawei account. For example, I'm going to search for IMG and see how I get the filter of files or folders from my computer, or also from my cell phone, or in this case from my tablet, which is the one that is connected. You can also verify that everything is in optimal condition, and you can also search for drivers to make sure you have everything perfectly well updated. It also has Huawei Cloud, where you can have the backup of all your documents, notes, tasks, and more. Remember that they offer you 5 GB of free cloud storage, or you can hire more advanced plans so that all your photos are also backed up. Although I must tell you that the interaction with Huawei Cloud is a little slow. It seems that the server takes a little longer to respond than we would like, but at the end of the day here you can get to have everything perfectly synchronized and backed up. As for security, this device will use the fingerprint reader as the authentication method, since it doesn't have some Windows Hello compatible facial recognition, but the fingerprint reader can become very useful. Obviously, the registration will be quite simple. Just put and remove your finger multiple times and in different positions. And let's turn off the computer so you can see more or less how long it takes to boot the system. Remember that if you turn on the computer using your registered finger, it will log in directly. So we're going to press the power button. We're going to wait for it to do the verification and obviously here log in to your Windows account as well. Then the boot is going to be very fast also because of the solid state storage that it has. Notice that it already turned on and immediately logged in. If I turn on the computer with another finger, it's going to ask for the password first. And remember that there is also available the option to encrypt all the content that is on your computer to prevent anyone else from accessing it without your authorization. The battery included with this computer is 70 watt-hours. That's a considerably large battery, and remember that to test this battery I run this application called Quick CPU Stress Tester, which will put a tremendous workload on the processor to test how efficient it can be. So in this case it ran for an hour and 24 minutes of maximum stress on the processor. It definitely proves to us that it is a processor that is not that efficient. That is to say, if you want to use this computer in a portable way demanding the maximum possible power, the battery is not going to last as long as we would like. But without having this drainer and simply watching YouTube videos with 50% brightness and 50% volume, it got up to 10 hours with 10 minutes, being the record time I have to date in computers I have tested doing this test. So if you run not so complex tasks, the battery is going to be spectacular. If you run very complex and very heavy tasks, the processor is not as efficient, and since it has too much power, it can drain the battery very quickly. And regarding the charger, it is 65 watts, but note that it comes with the cable completely attached. Personally, I don't like this so much. Also, the plug comes completely glued, so when you connect it to the electrical contact, it may use more space than desired. So, it is a charger that I consider a little less practical than I would like. And in this case, the charge it offers us is average. That is, with 15 minutes of charging it recovered 23% of energy. So at the beginning it charges well, but then it gets much slower and finished charging almost in 2 hours. And remember that through software we will also find options to protect the battery, although they come a little hidden. Within Huawei PC Manager there is a menu that not many people see. Here you can enter settings, and finally, among many other things that you can turn off or on, in the battery section there is the smart charging option. This will be very useful because if you are one of those users who usually need to keep your computer plugged in for a long time because you want to use it always with maximum power, or you do not want it to be discharged for another time, the smart charge will keep the battery at 70%, or even if it is too hot, the computer will stop charging. You could also activate a personalized charge limit so that the battery only charges up to the level you tell it to. Remember that a healthy practice is not to charge the battery to 100% if you want it to last for more years, so it can come in handy as well. Now let's talk about performance. Let me show you the features of this computer because it comes with Intel Core Ultra 7 processor, 155H, although there is another edition with Intel Core Ultra 5, 125H. In this case, I am testing the higher end version, and in both cases it comes with Intel Arc integrated graphics plus 16 GB of dual channel RAM and 1 TB of solid state storage. By the way, speaking of storage, note that it comes in 2 partitions. The system partition is just under 200 GB. Remember that in this generation it is already possible to enable maximum performance mode even if the computer is unplugged from the power. In fact, in addition to the balanced mode, a power saving mode has now been added so that you can further extend your battery life, which we have already seen is very good. But if you're interested in benchmarks, in the case of Cinebench when plugged in, it gave me a score of 12,077 in multi-core and 1,661 in single-core. And curiously, unplugged it gave me a higher performance in multi-core, reaching 12,299 points, although in single-core it decreased to 1,303. So, in conclusion, we could say that it is a computer that maintains the same level of performance both plugged in and unplugged, at least very similar, unlike other computers that could vary a lot in performance depending on whether they are plugged in or not. So, let's test how long it takes to open various applications. There will be 10 applications in total. Right now the computer is unplugged from the power and it's in balanced mode, although in this case it also has power saving mode and maximum performance mode available, but we're going to test it in balanced mode. So we start this test of opening 10 applications. Obviously, we don't need to wait for it to finish opening one application to open another, but we go one by one just to test the maximum speed it could achieve compared to other computers where we have performed exactly the same test. So we are about to enter the more complex applications. We just got through the light applications, but the Adobe applications are much heavier, so they might take longer to open. So let's wait for these 3 remaining applications to open before we stop our timer. We are now entering Premiere, and lastly we will be opening Photoshop, and after that we are going to stop the timer to see what the speed of time it reached. We're about to finish the test, but it seems that in this balanced mode it may take a little bit longer than we would like. Obviously, if we enable the maximum performance mode, the performance is going to increase, but let's wait and see the differences for yourself. It's about a minute in and it still won't finish opening Photoshop, so we'll just keep waiting and that's it. About 6 seconds on average to open each application, which is not that powerful, but obviously we're talking about balanced mode. Now, the novelty of this computer is that you don't need to have it plugged into the power, so you can run the maximum performance mode. So we're going to switch to this mode and we're going to run the test again. Again, there we are starting over again with the simple applications, and these will obviously open up pretty much immediately. So we're already starting now with the heavier applications, and these, even though they're going to take a little bit longer, I definitely think it's very clear that in this high performance mode, it's not taking as long as what we've seen in the balanced mode. And obviously in power saving mode, for sure, they're going to take longer to open, but also at the same time, the power is going to be stretched out longer. So if you're doing very simple tasks that don't require that much processing, it's highly recommended that you turn on power saving mode. Notice, on average, it took with this profile. It definitely gives you a very good level of power. And in this case, the curious thing is that the performance does not vary too much when you have the computer plugged into the power. So it's highly likely that if we plug the computer in, we're going to have a very similar result, but we're going to run that test anyway so that everything is demonstrated. Now we have the computer plugged into the power, and again, it's at the maximum performance profile. So let's run this same test by opening several applications at the same time. Notice that they are opening very fast. It really is a computer that is super snappy in the maximum performance profile. But fortunately, it also gives you the option of the power saving profile in case you don't require as much power and your top priority is battery life. In fact, in our battery test, we ran it with the balance profile, so surely if we ran it with the power saving profile, it could have even more battery life. There it is. It did improve its plugged in time a little bit, so yes, it can get a little bit more power, but it's very similar power unplugged and plugged in, which is very remarkable because in the world of Windows laptops in general, a lot of computers alter their performance too much depending on whether they're plugged in or not. But now let's also open several tabs within the web browser so that you can see how fast these tabs open and also that they are all keeping running. So notice, we have practically all of them already open. Some of them are still loading some content, but overall they're all open. So in addition to this, we have WhatsApp, we have Telegram, Office applications, where we're also going to open some documents. Here we already have a Word document with quite a bit of text written in it. We're also going to open an Excel document. And again, in this case, it's a fairly large document with lots and lots of information. And finally, PowerPoint. And we've got it. With some slides, Lightroom also has something open. In Premiere, we're going to open one of these projects as well, and we're going to appreciate right now how the RAM is behaving. Notice that the RAM is almost full, 94% full, and it's probably going to stay very close to that. So now that we have managed to fill the RAM memory, we are going to open this document as well. Notice that the object selection tool is enabled and practically instantly it was able to detect each of these objects. So the truth is that the performance is going to be very high, and notice that even if we switch between multiple applications, it still has a positive experience. In the case of the video editor, maybe the response is not immediate and agile, but in the rest of the applications we are going to have a good performance. Here you can see how everything is still running. We do not see that any application is taking a long time to return, or white screens or something similar, so definitely the performance is very good. Now let's see how it behaves exporting a video recorded in with a total duration of 1 minute. It is a fairly simple video. We're going to export it with H.264, although this is obviously going to vary also depending on what video editor you use. There are some editors that are much faster than others. In this case, Premiere is not known for being one of the fastest at exporting, but still, it's performing very well. We're pretty much going to wait for it to finish, although sometimes it takes a little while to close the file. Then, it looks like it's about to finish, but it still takes a few more moments. We're going to wait until it's completely finished before we pause this. And that's it. It took about 27 seconds. I think that's pretty good. Finally, in games, I tried Disney's Speedstorm with the automatic quality to start with. In this case, as I anticipated, it performs very similarly when unplugged and when plugged in. Only when plugged in it can get a little warmer, although it also slightly raises its frames per second. Unplugged it averaged about 90 frames per second. Plugged in it went up to 96%. While recording screen, you are going to notice a few small cuts when unplugged. Although, when it's plugged in, you're not going to have these kinds of little cuts if you're recording the screen, but without screen recording, even unplugged, you have a good experience. The temperature reached 42 degrees Celsius or so when it was unplugged. When it was plugged in, it got up to 42.8 degrees Celsius, mostly in this upper area. So it's still not extreme heating, especially considering it's not a device that you're holding in your hands. I also tested Gears 5 and look at the graphics quality. In this case, using the default settings, note that we set unlimited frames per second, and that was the only thing we changed because everything else we kept as it was. Many things are selected in low quality, especially at the beginning. But then there are several things considered in high quality and some others in medium. Remember that in computer there are too many settings, but we play with this default setting. And in summary, it's something very similar to what we saw in the previous game. That is, unplugged, it gave us 41 frames per second on average, and plugged in it went up to 44. The temperature also stayed different in these tests. Unplugged it was at 41.1 degrees Celsius, and curiously unplugged it did go up significantly to 45 degrees Celsius. So it is not a computer dedicated to gaming, and that is evident, but if you want to play casual content, I think you'll be able to run it without further complication. You don't see the device freezing up in these types of games. Although everything will depend entirely on the graphics settings, since in the case of eFootball, it defaults to high graphics quality. And with this high graphics setting, this computer is definitely not capable of giving you a good experience. The game looks quite slow, at about 18 frames per second recording the screen. Without recording, it improves slightly, but it's still not a very smooth experience. Still, I scored this tremendous goal. And finally, on Forza Horizon, what we did was run the benchmark that it comes with so that it automatically tells us the recommended quality. So after the test, this is the configuration. In many ways, the quality is intermediate. In a few settings, the quality is high, but the result is quite good. In fact, the average is above 60 frames per second. So it depends on the graphics settings if you are going to have a smooth experience or not. The best fit on this computer will be to play with graphics at an intermediate level, since it doesn't have dedicated graphics, but the integrated graphics I think perform well at this level. I insist it's not a dedicated gaming computer or anything like that, but still it gives you considerably good capabilities considering the weight and thinness of the device. Obviously, the more demanding the task, the hotter it is going to get, as in this case it reached over 46 degrees Celsius when running this content. And for now, this has been all about this computer. I hope you liked the video. If you did, you know you can let us know, and we'll see you next time.